People of the page, hello. My name is Awen. I go by Primal Druidry online because that is what I do. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a bio on myself before getting into the topic at hand. Practicing Druid for over 12 years, I've led and partaken in countless group rituals in real life, not just online, definitely not on Discord, double wink. I've taught multiple classes and workshops on Druidry, hands-on at metaphysical shops and pagan gatherings, at the beautiful Phrase Hermetic Supplies, the Crooked Path, the Green Man, stores in North Carolina, my friends Vamachara Tattoo and Ritual Supply in freaking New York. Like, nothing crazy, but a little bit across my travels. This is very much what I do. I've also been a member of Arnriacht Fein, ADF, as he sort of on and off toxic girlfriend since I was 17. We have our disagreements, and I definitely do not represent them in the slightest. I'm sure multiple people in ADF to this day would be aghast to even be associated with me whatsoever. So I very much don't represent ADF, but I really credit them with how I came up learning how to do ritual hands-on, just having that template and that experience in person meant so much. And I completed their Dedicant Path program, which I really recommend just for any pagans looking for a foundation in Druidry, to have an actual curriculum, to have what to study, what to do, basically writing book reports. I finished the Dedicant Path 2-3 years ago by now. So that's me. I'm not popping up out of the woodwork, totally shooting my mouth off. So by day, on a practical note, I am a strength trainer, and I very much believe overall in history and myth, not as a restraint system, but as a trampoline, as something to apply in the practical, in the day-to-day. And that's part of what I love so much about Druidry. It is the fusion of scholarship, of history, of the myths, of poetry, of the legends and lore, into the practical, into the experiential, into the ordeal. But that is about Druidry. That's separate. That is simply my background. Today, our topic is yoga and why I don't do it, which is very much why I wanted to give a little bit of a bio for those of you who may be new to me. I very much am religious in my own way, and I want to give some food for thought for anyone else out there who is religious in any way that isn't Hindu. I am not here to tell you what to do. I partially just don't care enough to tell anyone what to do, but I think it's important to talk about the reality with yoga, because yoga has been packaged to us. I'm American, so very much here in America, in the West, as this safe, sterile, just neutral, agnostic sort of way to stretch and relax and decompress for maybe an hour once a week or something like that. And they'll talk a little bit about, like, some of the poses are good for core, working core. Please don't get me started on that. But it's divorced from any kind of serious religious roots. You're definitely told, I've been to a few yoga classes over the years, mostly years ago at this point. You're told that you don't have to believe in anything, that it's not a belief thing, what have you. And overall, this kind of false advertising is ultimately what inspired me to do some simple Googling. This is really not some crazy, you don't have to go digging in any serious depth to find out the reality here. But what finally really just sent me a bit over the edge on this is that I was in the process of trying to get a simple group fitness certification. And what I wanted was a general sort of group fitness cert, nothing more, nothing less. What I ended up getting roped into my first time around was this unholy, really just my sort of nightmare, this unholy girl boss, new age, yet corporate blend of yoga, Pilates, and Tai Chi being all packaged into the same nothing, into the same just like meaningless, cultureless, devoid of any significance or origin, kind of just package. And I'm not going to name the organization for the moment because I don't want to make it about that. And maybe another time, frankly. But I was getting increasingly irritated with the way that it was being taught to me and the way that they wanted me to teach it to other people. Because yet another sort of like just red flag in the whole experience for me is I went into this wanting to craft my own experience for people. I basically am just coming from a place of, I know a lot of really jacked people that don't stretch, that have no flexibility, no mobility, and they have amazing musculature, but just cannot, like crazy joint pain, crazy stiffness. So I simply want to get lifters and frankly non-lifters to just be a little more mobile, be a little more flexible, not as a substitute for strength training, although that's its own thing. None of this is a substitute for actually working out, but complementary to it. So anyways, I was getting increasingly frustrated with this kind of experience, which I had my own reasons for doing, and it was not to become some girl boss mouthpiece for this unholy new age bullshit. That is very much not what I do. I understand that people on the outside, people who are not pagan, especially the Christians that I have known, they don't distinguish between unholy new age bullshit and what I consider to be serious paganism. But for whatever it's worth, there is very much a difference. And forgive me, there is absolutely a difference in what I do. I am very devotional. I, again, do consider myself very religious. I have a patron goddess who I already devote my strength training to. It is my primary offering to my patroness, who is the Celtic goddess of sovereignty, warfare, strategy, fate, magic, sexuality. Again, that is its own video, and I would love to do more classes just on the Morrigan. There's so much to dive into. But regardless, you do not have to be remotely on the same page as myself to take issue with what yoga has been packaged into. So now that I've drawn attention to the false advertising element, let's talk a little bit about just the reality. And the reality is that yoga is Hindu ritual. It is not simply inspired by Hinduism. It is not simply from like this vague, generic Eastern, quote unquote, heavy air quotes, like Eastern exotic thing that like people, again, with just sheer ignorance or at worst are actively deceiving you, want to package it as, and again, the unholy new age bullshit sort of sphere. It is explicitly Hindu ritual, and I'm going to cite some of the more influential yoga gurus, Hindu gurus of our time. One of them, I am probably saying this wrong, Pattabhi Jois. You can see this in a piece on the Hindu American website if you look it up. Literally, it says, Pattabhi Jois tells us, yoga for physical practice is no good, of no use. It's just a lot of sweating, pushing, and heavy breathing for nothing. I agree, by the way. Does nothing for strength training, does nothing for building strength whatsoever. Anyways, he says, the spiritual aspect, which is beyond the physical, is the purpose of yoga. When the nervous system is purified, when your mind resets in the Atman, the self, then you can experience the true greatness of yoga. So to stay on that sort of topic and use a little bit more examples, again, you don't have to Google very much here. You can literally just hop on YouTube and find a video literally titled Yoga is Not Spiritual, It's Hindu Ritual, where the thumbnail is Don't Steal Yoga, from the perspective of another guru of sorts, a Hindu guru, who I'm also probably going to butcher the name of, Nityananda, a rather flamboyant looking individual with some allegations, but nonetheless making a relevant point for today's case that yoga is not just some vague, generic, general spiritual way to stretch. It is ritual. So I'm going to cite one more person here, a rather helpful Redditor, in fact. Let it not be said that Reddit has done nothing for us. But this gentleman points out, username Abby Loves Theology, points out, ABI, so probably man. Anyways, yoga means union, and that's something else that I would bring up as well. The literal definition is the union with yourself and their idea of God. Their idea. I want to emphasize that. Anyways, this Redditor tells us, yoga means union and is written about in the Bhagavad Gita, a scripture of Hinduism. Pantajali, who wrote the Yoga Sutras, says that the goal of yoga is to achieve samadhi, where it is claimed that you connect with God/the divine. Yoga philosophy claims to be a means of connecting with God. Yoga has a patron god, called Shiva. He's a Hindu god, and he is who yogis devote their practice to. Now I'm going to cut this quote off for a second and just invite you to once again look into this for yourself. The poses are not simply stretching, they are explicit invocations of devotion. So to continue quoting this person, yoga is literally a form of prayer. The asanas, otherwise called yoga postures, were invented so people can sit in meditation for hours, focusing on Shiva. They are not simply exercises. To claim so is to misunderstand yoga. I would go as far as to claim that asana only yoga is not yoga, it is just Pilates. By the way, as I said, the actual Hindu gurus, yoga gurus, quote unquote, are saying this themselves. To keep this quote for now, it is not yoga because you are not uniting with anything. Yoga has a deep philosophy behind it, guidelines about pacifism, vegetarianism, how to treat others, guidelines on how to pray, avoiding alcohol, etc. It should not be viewed as something you do just for a stretch. And he goes on to share more of his opinions, which I, for the most part, kind of agree with. He goes on to say that it's more like a lifestyle. Again, forgive me, thank you for making those points, but missing the point fundamentally. It is not a lifestyle. It is a religion. It is just an expression of a religion, and at least in my case, someone else's religion. I very much have my own. I have my own goddess that I make physical devotional offerings to, that I devote my strength training to. I want nothing to do with Hindu gods. So why would I make the offering of my energy and my physicality to them? I want nothing to do with them. That entire framework is one that I could not want any more distance from, especially when you talk about, pacifism and vegetarianism. I certainly could not be more opposed to if I tried without landing myself in prison, which is not the point. But anyways, principally opposed to. I am actually a former lifelong, up until a certain point, obviously, vegetarian that devolved, shall I say, into veganism until I finally, this is a somewhat unrelated tangent, but finally had the realization from, again, my uniquely pagan perspective, that this thing that I thought was bringing me closer to nature, I was actually rejecting nature by doing so. And part of that realization came from strength training, came from viewing strength training as devotion and realizing that I was in fact starving myself. So that is kind of separate, but anyways, when I talk about this sort of like unholy new age girl boss concoction of bullshit, I'm really not trying to be overly damning, for one, but it's just the facts of the matter. Something that I think is really its own topic that I might return to in the future is that, for better or worse, when people leave Christianity or whatever their Abrahamic religion of choice, of unchoice was, forgive me, they too often, unfortunately, tend to jump into that new age bullshit blender where everything is equally nothing. Everything just doesn't mean anything. It's all sterilized into the same, like, everything is, we're all just taking different paths up the tree, blah, blah, blah. Which, for one, is very much, forgive me guys, not true. It's completely not true. We're obviously not all doing the same thing. Otherwise, we would be doing that. Forgive my cavewoman assessment of that sort of ages-old question, but if we were really all doing the same thing, why are we fighting all the time? Why are we not just doing the same thing? We're very much not. We have different principles. We're fundamentally doing different things. I am absolutely not doing the same thing that some random Hindu person is doing, to say the least. There's a few different really facets to dive into when it comes to the new age bullshit blender. I'll just pick at a few of them in no particular order. You could and should probably make videos and essays just about that topic. I think one of them, though, is I have believed for a very long time that even as a pagan, even as someone that does witchcraft, that very much, has walked this path for over 12 years specifically. I am a druid. Forgive me, tea hiccups. Druidry is a fusion of hands-on magic and pagan belief and that sort of hands-on practicality. I pursued it because I, for one, felt a soul calling, for two, couldn't abide by the idea of a middleman between myself and the divine. I felt the soul calling level need to mediate my own relationships with the divine that I'd always experienced in a more plural fashion. Since I'm on this tangent a little bit, I consider it a serious mistake for any of the paganism, witchcraft stuff that has made it so mainstream. I consider it a deep mistake and misstep for any of it to become as mainstream as it has. That is simply not how it operates. We've always kind of thrived, and I'm using the royal we here, as genuinely being the weirdos on the periphery of society, as being kind of the outliers. And I know that there's plenty of pagan people, obviously, who feel that everyone should be pagan and blah, blah, blah. I'm not here to get into that. Because once again, how well does it ever work for anyone to tell other people what to do? Let's pretend that that was my viewpoint. What changes? What changes for me to just wave my magic wand and go, everyone should be pagan? Who gives a fuck? Nobody. You have to actually have an experience for yourself, which, by the way, is one of the foundational principles of Druidry, is ordeal, immersion, Imrama, that sort of like sea journey, which has deeper trance connotations. But I bring it up to say, what I really care about is people having deep and meaningful experiences. So I can take that in a few different ways. For one, when it comes to the broader topic at hand here, religious people who are not Hindu, this is not me telling you what to do, probably have no business doing yoga, and especially have no business doing it without doing research for themselves on what it actually means. And if you can maybe square that circle that, if you're calling yourself Christian, while you're making physical devotionals to Shiva, if you can square that circle, I'm nobody to stop you. But the funny part too, when I started doing my own research on this, is in a sense the Christians were right about this in terms of their speaking. They use their own language to say it, but I think we've all seen, it's usually the fundamentalists who put it in quite this way, but most of us have seen, the Christians who are talking about yoga as demonic, and that yoga is demon worship, is demonic, what have you. If you think, obviously that is not my language, right? Like that's not my verbiage, because it's not my framework. That's not what I'm coming from. But if your viewpoint is that every spiritual entity, every God, everything but Jesus is a demon, then yeah, yoga does make the cut for that description. So it's certainly something that I don't imagine why any Christian would be doing. And that's something else that I would raise for my own broader community as well, even though, we all are doing our own thing. And again, not here to tell anyone what to do. But if you have your own devotional practice, if you have a pantheon that you already work with, if you already have your own religion, for me personally, why on earth would I make offerings to foreign gods? And again, foreign meaning not my ancestry, not what I feel any kind of calling or relationship to. I want nothing to do with Hinduism. I can't imagine something, I can't actually, but that's its own thing. We're not going to talk about Islam right now. It probably makes the top 5 religions that I could not be more just separate from if I tried. And that's just me personally. So overall, and I know I raised some of the points about the sort of new age bullshit blender, and didn't flesh all of them out, because that's probably going to be its own video, or a few down the line in the future. But one of my immediate points that I'll simply make about it is, one of the many things that is incorrect about that blender worldview is that things do have origins. They do mean something. You can't just cherry pick and take what you think is pretty and cute and nice on the surface and divorce it from its original framework. And especially in the case of yoga, it's not like it's some distant descendant of Hinduism as a practice. It's not some like distant connection. It is Hindu. It is Hinduism. It is the physical expression of that religion. So again, and I'm sure, I've definitely seen people find like a woke way of making this point as well. Like, this is why white people are evil, is because they're just stealing, they're doing colonialism and stealing stuff from Hindu. And it's like, okay, you can definitely make the point in that way. You could also just observe that most people are fucking NPCs, and they have no business in serious mysticism of any kind. And they are clearly cherry picking, or they are grifters straight up, and they are trying to make a buck by stealing from other people's cultures. 100%. I think it is manipulative and dishonest to turn that into some kind of anti-white people at large take. That's never stopped anyone before, and that's just something I am personally pretty sick of. But yeah, this is just something that more of us should have an awareness of and should be talking about, and not be treating as some kind of neutral, agnostic, at most vaguely new agey kind of thing at best. It is Hinduism, and if that's not your religion, I don't see why you would do it. So I think this more or less sums up the point that I wanted to make here. There's other things that I raised. So if you're simply listening for my take on that topic, feel free to turn this video off at this point. My hair is so fried. I'm going to try to connect a few more of my rambles before I stop recording though. And being, in terms of the whole, the New Age blender thing, so often when you see people like Kat Von D, or just overall people who went from occultism, witchcraft, paganism, of whatever variety, it's a category, not a specific religion. It speaks to so much, so many different religious paths can fall under paganism. So many people in the pagan community, quote unquote, get really, really upset and angry and hostile and aggressive and just dumb about it when people like Kat Von D, sort of go from being some kind of practitioner to being very Christian, to becoming, I believe she became specifically an Orthodox Christian, which for whatever it's worth, I really see as the most, if not the only serious denomination of Christianity at this point. And there's a lot to get into with all that, but for me personally, I cannot imagine being offended at that. I can't imagine being upset at it for a few different reasons. One of them being, if you are not an atheist, which I very much am not, then presumably you understand that people have real spiritual callings. They have real religious callings. They're having real journeys. So I'm personally not just adopting my religion to make some kind of cultural point or to prove any kind of point, forgive me, or for clout or what have you. It's not for other people. I don't care if I was the only person on earth that had my, religious technology, whatever you want to call it. I don't care if I was the only one doing what I do to this day. It is my soul calling. It is simply what I do. So for one, why would I try to diminish someone else's serious experience in that way? For two, as I think I kind of started to touch on, and I am a rambler, so I like to circle back to things in my own time, about serious paganism, serious witchcraft, as not having a middleman between you and the divine. When we're mediating the powers that be for ourselves, that's fucking hard. It's extremely draining. It's extremely demanding. It is a heavy and serious coin to pay to do it with integrity, which, forgive me, I'm not trying to sound like I'm morally flexing. Why Druidry resonates so much with me is that it is fully reliant upon integrity and on honorable relationships between myself and how I treat other people, myself and how I treat the gods, myself and how I treat my ancestors and the nature spirits and the fae and what have you. So, God, yeah, for someone to walk into that kind of challenge and responsibility and that entire world and not actually be called to it, it would just be miserable and probably terrifying and probably torturous. So I have felt for a very long time, if you're not called to it, don't do it. I really feel that most people have no business doing even half of what serious pagans do. I think that we are for the most part kind of just, we come out the womb as we are. You can cultivate certain traits, you can cultivate certain skills, but for the most part we are who we are, and this is just my opinion. The best that we can do is refine that into the best version of that we can be, but you can't make yourself be someone you're not. So that's a long and roundabout way of saying that I think for the most part, a lot of people probably would be better off being Christian, especially if you're not ready or you don't feel the need to take on that kind of insane spiritual sovereignty in the way that those of us, who just were born to do it. And again, I'm sorry, this is not me trying to sound cool. This is not me trying to okay, that is me literally flexing. I'm kind of happy with the guns right now. And let me calm down. Anyways, I think you guys get what I'm saying, I hope. And ironically, maybe not ironically, this is, again, Druidry really just is my calling, because when you look at what little we have of Druidic principles and what little we have of sacred texts within Druidry, the cauldron of poesy and our sort of, sacred poetry itself, it says that kind of people just come out the gate how we are. We are born with our cauldrons tipped a certain way, as it were. There's the cauldron of the mind, cauldron of the heart, cauldron of the loins, creation, life, you guys get it. And you can, through intense experiences, you can shift and tilt things a certain way. You're not just helpless to circumstance. That's not the point. But our nature is our nature. And especially when it came to the Kat Von D thing, people act like, forgive me, was it Doreen Virtue or Doreen Valiente? Virtue, literally, like this happens every so often. Every generation has its version. So for the most part, I fully support people who are simply not cut out for magic to go home. Go home, by all means. I wish some of them would do it faster. And again, Orthodoxy is probably still the only denomination of Christianity I have serious respect for, although there is a lot about Catholicism I find very beautiful. Forgive me, that's its own can of worms. And again, mine is just, my opinion does not mean anything. I am not the dictator of the world. Anyways, a last final possible tangential point is that while I fully support people going the fuck home if witchcraft is not for them, if paganism is not for them, with all the love in my heart, I do think it is a shame when people kind of just encounter the new age bullshit blender where it's all just sterilized cherry picking and nothing really means anything because they don't really believe anything. I think it's a shame when people get very steeped in that and then they go running usually to fundamentalist Christianity, which is what Doreen Virtue did, sadly. And I'm just saying it's sad because fundamentalism really does not have the mystical streak that something like Orthodoxy does. Anyways, this is not the point. What I consider the shame in being steeped in the new age bullshit and then running back to the church is so often those people are like, oh, here's what's evil about witchcraft. Here's what's evil about paganism. And it's like, you weren't doing serious witchcraft. You weren't doing serious paganism. You were doing the bullshit blender. You were doing the bullshit buffet. You were doing the nothing actually has any consequences. Nothing means anything. And then, shocker, something scary happened to you because things do mean something. And then you ran crying back to the church, which again is what you should do. But those people, and this is where I do, obviously I will empathize with my fellow pagans. Don't act like don't act like that kind of experience is representative of the real thing. But for, the people who did really give an honest shot at the real thing, and it just truly was not for them, and they felt that it was profoundly negative, go with God, literally. I'm not here to diminish that or take away from their experience in any way. So all of this tangents and tangential yapping later, if I really can bring anything for people to consider, it's just that things do mean something. And that sort of that flattening, that sterilization that happened to yoga has basically happened to anything of substance that people catch wind of over the past, I don't know how long, I don't know how many decades. I'm sure someone else who's monitoring the situation more closely than I have been could tell you with a more specific timeline. But I think actually that's a little bit of what we were just talking about with the pagan and the new age, sort of bullshitification of everything. The same thing that happened to yoga happened with paganism. It's the same thing that happens to anything that Funko Popped NPCs can get their hands on. So I am not here to tell people what to do, but I will encourage you perhaps to put more thoughts into where you invest your energy, which is priceless, than the average Disney adult Funko Popped NPC does. I would invite you hopefully to do that. And if you want to stretch and get into mobility and flexibility, you can do that. And you, I would argue, should do that without resorting to worshiping foreign gods through your priceless energy. That is such a fucking crazy thing that has been normalized. And again, just not sorry at all. Hinduism is not something I want to associate myself with in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, this is all of this and more is why I, as a druid, as a pagan, do not do yoga in any way, shape, or form. I absolutely do mobility and flexibility stretches, and some of them on the surface look similar to what you might see in a yoga class. Like the classic prone press up looks like cobra pose. Functionally, it is cobra pose, sorry. But what it isn't doing is offering your energy to Shiva. That's what it's not fucking doing. It's actually just stretching your lower back and taking a little bit of tension off your spine and giving you a little bit more mobility. So I will, to cap off this video, I will put my strength trainer hat on and say that mobility is for everyone and strength training is for everyone. and whatever path you are coming from, I highly encourage people to really approach that sort of act of physicality as prayer in their own way. Again, you do not have to resort to someone else's religion to do that. You can very much do that on your own. And for me personally, it's not as if my ancestors were somehow lesser or bereft of that kind of system. So in Druidry, what I have sort of taken to combining with my own flexibility, mobility sort of experiences, we have the 3 cauldrons. We very much, as I already touched on, we have the cauldron of the mind, the heart, the loins. Cauldron of the mind correlates to wisdom, clarity, vision, the fire in the head of poetry of the Awen, my namesake. The heart correlates to our vocation, our calling in life, and more. The cauldron of our loins of life is fertility, both literally and otherwise. It's creativity. It's just that generative life force energy. So when I do my mobility, flexibility, sort of like either as a warm-up before and after a lift, or just as its own thing on my active off days, I start with the cauldron of the mind, with the crown of my head, and move down from there. And everything I do, you can very much have your own spiritual, religious experience without yoga. I think I will start to cut the video off here. I hope this gave you a little bit of food for thought, and perhaps in the future, I actually am thinking of doing a sort of walkthrough of a Celtic Cauldrons inspired mobility, flexibility sort of flow, as it were. I don't want to call it a workout because that's not what it is. The Primal Flow guys need to calm down with that. But my name is Awen. Thank you for listening. I really have nothing else to say except go outside, touch some grass, and go do some magic.